What if I told you that the difference between the trip of a lifetime and an absolutely miserable, crowded nightmare isn't actually about where you go, but like just shifting your calendar by 14 days?
Yeah, it completely depends how we usually think about booking a vacation, doesn't it? I mean, we focus so much on the destination, we just totally forget about the mechanics of time.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we are exploring for you today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a really highly curated travel guide from FlipZoniac, and it's titled 8 Incredible Places to Visit This June.
Right, but we should be clear, this isn't just a list.
Oh, totally. I want to be incredibly clear with you right out of the gate. This isn't just us, reading off a random list of pretty beaches.
Mhm.
We are digging into this material because it acts as a masterclass in a very specific, highly coveted travel strategy.
It really is. When you analyze the specific 8 locations they've chosen, you realize this guide is actually a blueprint for mastering the shoulder season hack.
The shoulder season hack.
Yeah, it's basically this argument that June is the mathematical and meteorological sweet spot for global travel.
Okay, hold on though. Because, shoulder season is usually just the travel industry's polite marketing spin for, well, predictably bad weather.
Right, yeah.
Like you go to the Caribbean in September, you save money, sure, but you might spend 4 days staring out a hotel window at a hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
Are we sure June in these places isn't just cheap for a bad reason?
Well, that is the exact trap this guide navigates around. The data and the destination profiles they've pulled together, it shows that June is this rare, anomalous window.
Oh.
In these specific locations, the weather isn't compromising at all. It's actually optimal. You get blooming landscapes, massive cultural events, but crucially, you secure those shoulder season savings.
The savings.
Exactly. We're talking 20 to 30% off peak summer prices right before the suffocating crowds of July and August arrive.
So you're paying a fraction of what the person arriving like 4 weeks later is going to pay, but you're arguably getting a much better experience.
Precisely.
Okay.
Because, as the guide points out, the absolute best travel experiences aren't dictated by our wall calendars or, when schools let out. They're driven entirely by biological and climatic triggers.
Right. Nature doesn't care about your PTO schedule.
It really doesn't.
So let's start right there with the biological timers. The guide throws us right into the deep end of massive natural events, specifically the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania and Yellowstone National Park here in the U.S. Let's look at the Serengeti first.
Okay, yeah.
The guide highlights June as the absolute peak action for the Great Migration. But why June? Like, what is physically happening on the ground?
Well, to understand the timing, you have to look at the region like a massive climate-driven conveyor belt.
Yeah.
The migration isn't just animals deciding to take a stroll. It's a desperate, constant search for resources.
Right.
So by June, the long rains have stopped, the southern plains start drying up rapidly, and this biological imperative literally forces millions of wildebeest and zebra to move north and west toward permanent water sources.
So the dry weather is literally squeezing them into these massive bottlenecks.
Exactly. And those bottlenecks are the rivers. June is when you get those dramatic, chaotic river crossings that everyone associates with, a world-class safari.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the herds are massing on the banks, the crocodiles are waiting, the dust is kicking up. And because the rains have stopped, the temperatures are incredibly comfortable, like 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. You aren't baking in extreme heat, and you aren't getting bogged down in mud.
And the guide suggests staying at these luxury-tented camps to do dawn game drives.
Yeah.
Imagine waking up, stepping out of a canvas tent, and just hearing the thunder of millions of hooves across the plains while the air still has that crisp morning chill.
It's magical. And it's ideal for photographers because the dust hangs in the golden light.
Right.
And this is the real kicker. The July armada of safari vehicles hasn't swarmed the plains yet.
That is huge, and they even recommend combining this with a Zanzibar beach extension, which sounds amazing.
It's a brilliant pairing, really. You endure the rugged, dusty intensity of the bush, and then you just decompress on the coast. And the mechanism making that Tanzanian trip so perfect in June is the exact same dynamic playing out in their second recommendation, completely across the globe in Yellowstone.
Okay, Yellowstone is fascinating to me because the trigger isn't things drying up, it's things thawing out.
Yes, exactly.
The FlipZoniac guide notes that June is when the snowmelt finally allows full trail access to the Grand Prismatic Spring.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this because I want to push back a little on the source material here.
Sure.
Timing a trip to these parks is like catching lightning in a bottle. But couldn't you just wait until mid-July when you know for a absolute fact everything is open and sunny. Like, why rush the season and book the Old Faithful Inn so early?
What's fascinating here is the tension between accessibility and exclusivity. You see, Yellowstone is a high-altitude ecosystem locked under a literal vault of ice and snow for much of the year.
Right, the winters are brutal there.
Very brutal. So June is the moment the tumbler clicks and the vault swings open. The sheer volume of snowmelt in June means the rivers are swollen and roaring, which makes the waterfalls spectacularly powerful.
Oh, that makes total sense. The landscape is intensely awake.
Exactly. It's full summer glory without the July onslaught. The geothermal features, like the geysers, they contrast beautifully with the crisp air, which is usually around 15 to 20 degrees Celsius during the day. It creates these massive pillars of steam.
And what about the wildlife?
The grizzly bears are newly awake, extremely active, and foraging in the lower meadows before the brutal midsummer heat forces them to seek shade at higher, basically invisible elevations. Plus, you've got free-roaming bison everywhere.
So you get maximum natural vitality, but you haven't yet hit the peak human congestion of midsummer road trippers.
You are absolutely beating the RV traffic jam. It's ideal for families.
And that explains why places like the historic Old Faithful Inn book incredibly fast for this window. You aren't just booking a room, you're booking access to a fleeting ecological moment.
Right. You're catching the park at its most aggressive and beautiful before it settles into the lethargy of late summer.
I love that.
And that transition from biological clocks to sheer, unyielding geography is a perfect bridge to the next section of the guide. Sometimes the weather doesn't just make a destination more comfortable, it dictates whether the destination is accessible to outsiders at all.
Right, where the climate acts as a literal geographic gatekeeper.
Precisely.
The guide points us to Ladakh in India and the island of Mauritius. Let's look at Ladakh first, because this is wild. For anyone listening who doesn't know, Ladakh is a high desert region in the Himalayas, and according to the guide, for most of the year, it is completely cut off from the world.
It is entirely inaccessible by road for months. The high-altitude mountain passes, which are literally the only way in, they are buried under lethal, impassable walls of ice and snow.
But then June hits. The ice wall melts, the roads are cleared, and suddenly, this hidden kingdom is unlocked.
It's like something out of a movie.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's almost like unlocking a hidden level in a video game that is completely blocked off or hazardous the rest of the year. The guide paints this incredible picture of what awaits you. Surreal, high desert lakes like Pandang So. The water is this impossible, brilliant turquoise, and it sits there reflecting the jagged snow-capped peaks against a perfectly clear sky.
And, you know, the profound insight about that kind of extreme isolation is that it preserves culture.
Right.
Because Ladakh is walled off by winter for so long, the local culture remains deeply rooted and distinct.
That makes a lot of sense.
The guide highlights that the monasteries, like Hemis, they host vibrant, colorful festivals in June.
Which isn't a coincidence, right? They hold the festivals in June because the locals themselves can finally travel between villages.
Exactly. The whole region wakes up and reconnects. You can take a Jeep or bike through these rugged mountain roads in totally manageable, mild weather, usually 10 to 20 degrees Celsius. It's highly budget-friendly, especially for Indian travelers. But the guide does issue a strict, non-negotiable warning.
Oh, right, the acclimatization.
Yes, you absolutely must spend a couple of days acclimatizing in the town of Leh before heading higher.
You cannot cheat geography. If you sprint up a Himalayan pass on day one, the altitude will absolutely wreck you.
It will ruin the trip.
You have to respect the physical reality of the place, which is a perfect segue to the guide's next pick, Mauritius. Because if Ladakh is about escaping a fortress of ice, Mauritius is all about dodging a deluge of water.
Specifically, evading the Asian monsoon season.
This is such a smart play. The guide positions Mauritius, an island nation in the Indian Ocean, as the ultimate sanctuary. While massive swaths of Asia are just getting hammered with torrential rains and flooding in June, Mauritius sits in this meteorological sweet spot. It's entering its dry season.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains how extreme geography dictates the flow of global tourism. June acts as a geographic gatekeeper here, melting the high-altitude ice in India and drying out the monsoon waters in the Indian Ocean.
Wow, yeah.
And think about what that means for the ocean itself in Mauritius. When you don't have torrential rain-washing soil and silt into the sea, the water becomes incredibly clear. The silt settles.
Right, which makes for perfect visibility.
Exactly. This is why the guide emphasizes snorkeling the coral reefs and exploring the Black River Gorges right now. The water visibility is at its absolute peak, and the ocean temperature hovers at a perfect 25 degrees Celsius.
Like a warm bath. You're essentially finding the geographic eye of the storm. You're relaxing on Lemoorn Beach, hiking through lush forests to waterfalls, and staying in these stunning luxury resorts like the one and only, eating incredible Creole fusion food. It's pristine.
You aren't fighting global weather systems, you are using them to your advantage.
Okay, so we've seen how June acts as a physical key, unlocking geographic barriers and biological migrations. But the physical environment sawing out is only half the story. The guide makes a really compelling argument that human culture has a thaw, too. Before the oppressive heat and the massive crowds of August force locals indoors, dense cities have this unique, vibrant window.
This is where we transition into sensory overload and cultural immersion. The guide focuses on Porto in Portugal and Marrakech in Morocco.
Let's take Porto. It sits along the Douro River, obviously famous for its port wine. The guide describes strolling through the UNESCO-listed Ribera district, surrounded by these beautiful, intricate azuleo-tiled facades with jacaranda trees in full purple bloom.
It sounds idyllic.
It does. But the reason June is the only time to go is the San Juan Festival. The guide literally describes the streets erupting into hammer-smashing fun and grilled sardines.
Which probably requires a bit of explanation for anyone who hasn't been. During this festival, people literally hit each other on the head with soft, squeaky plastic hammers as a sign of good luck.
That is amazing.
It really is. It is a massive, chaotic, communal street party.
But the climate impact is what makes it possible.
Right.
The guide notes the weather is still crisp enough, averaging around 23 degrees, that you get a beautiful coastal breeze. You can actually sit outside, eat grilled sardines, and drink a heavy glass of port wine without sweating through your shirt.
Right. In August, the city just bakes, the pavement radiates heat, and the locals flee to the beaches. In June, the locals are still there, partying in the streets alongside you.
You're catching the city in its authentic, celebratory rhythm. And the contrast between Porto's loud communal street party and their next pick, Marrakech, is wild.
It's night and day.
If Porto is chaotic, the guide paints Marrakech as this incredibly atmospheric, almost secretive sensory experience. You are navigating the labyrinthine souks of the Medina, haggling for spices, then retreating into these hidden riad courtyards that smell heavily of blooming orange blossoms.
The contrast between the sheer chaos of the market and the absolute silence of those courtyards is striking.
Completely. And you can visit the Majorelle Garden for those Yves Saint Laurent vibes, or take a hot air balloon ride over the desert at dawn. Now, the guide is honest. June in Morocco is undeniably hot.
Yeah, 30 to 35 degrees Celsius.
Right. But it says it's entirely bearable because the culture is built for it. You retreat to the shade of the Jamal El Fana Square for street food as the sun goes down. But the real insight here is their phrasing. They call it a perfect pre-Ramadan cultural immersion.
Yes.
How does that specific pre-peak or pre-Ramadan timing physically change the way a traveler actually absorbs a new culture?
Well, visiting a city right before its massive summer tourist rush, or right before a major religious observance like Ramadan, allows the traveler to participate in local rhythms. Because the locals are preparing for a month of fasting and altered schedules, the markets take on this frenetic, anticipatory energy.
Oh, that makes sense.
People are stocking up, there's this celebratory buzz in the air. By traveling in that window, you become a participant in a living city, rather than just standing shoulder to shoulder with other tourists holding cameras.
You are feeling the authentic pulse of the place. That distinction between a living city and a tourist museum brings us perfectly to the final section of the guide. Because you just cannot do a deep dive on June travel without talking about Europe in the summer.
No, you can't.
Specifically, Italy.
It is the unavoidable behemoth of summer tourism.
But what I love about FlipZoniac's approach here is that they don't just give you one Italian option. They juxtaposition two completely different destinations to create a masterclass in choosing your travel vibe. On one hand, you have the Amalfi Coast, the classic.
The absolute peak of high-gloss glamour.
Exactly. The guide describes winding along those terrifying cliffside roads to Positano, with its pastel villages stacked on top of each other. The sun is ripening the lemons for limoncello. You're ferry hopping over to Capri to swim in the Blue Grotto and hiking the Path of the Gods for epic views of the Tyrrhenian Sea.
The weather is perfect for it, too, usually 22 to 27 degrees.
Right, it's seafood feasts and villa stays. It is the definition of la dolce vita. Crucially, without the August hordes.
And we have to look at the structural geography of Amalfi to understand why June is critical there. Those steep cliffs mean there is severely limited space. The towns were built vertically, densely packed together.
Right.
This creates that beautiful, iconic aesthetic, but it also means the infrastructure physically cannot handle August crowds. The roads gridlock, the restaurants overflow. June allows you to experience the luxury before the sheer volume of humanity just breaks the system.
You get the romance without the traffic jam of Fiat 500s. But then the guide pivots and offers option 2, Puglia, the authentic alternative. It's in the deep south, the heel of the boot, and it promises a totally different reality.
Yeah, the geography there dictates a completely different experience. It's flatter, vastly more agricultural, and decentralized. It has way fewer tourists than Amalfi.
Right. Here, the guide highlights exploring the strange, cone-shaped trulli huts in Alberobello and the ancient stone cave dwellings in Matera. You aren't on steep cliffs. You are in sprawling olive groves buzzing with cicadas and sea breezes.
It's a very different vibe.
You're cycling, between towns to beach hop along the Adriatic shores or wine taste primitivo at Messerias, which are these beautiful fortified farmhouses. The mild 25-degree weather is perfectly suited for that. And instead of high-end seafood, you're eating rustic, fresh orecchie pasta.
It is a distinctly more grounded, slower-paced existence compared to Amalfi.
So what does this all mean? If you are looking at this guide, how do you choose? I mean, Amalfi is the blockbuster movie everyone knows they want to see, while Puglia is the brilliant indie film your coolest friend recommends. How does a listener navigate choosing between a famous checklist and a rustic discovery?
This raises an important question about what we really seek when we travel. And here is the real genius of the June hack. Remember those 20 to 30% shoulder season savings we talked about at the beginning?
The financial buffer, yeah.
Exactly. That savings makes both options viable. It entirely takes the pressure off the choice. You aren't priced out of Amalfi, but you also aren't forced into Puglia just because it's cheaper.
Oh, I see.
The savings allow you to afford the blockbuster Amalfi trip in comfort, or you can take those savings and profoundly upgrade your indie Puglia trip, maybe staying in a massive luxury masseria or extending your trip by a week. The June hack allows the traveler to focus entirely on their desired pace.
Money buys you choice, not just luxury. I love that framing. Okay, to wrap up this deep dive, we need to make sure you, listening, are fully equipped to actually execute this strategy. FlipZoniac ends with a smart traveler toolkit that deals with the cold, hard logistics.
Which are vital. A great strategy fails without proper execution.
First tip, utilize your loyalty programs to book flights and hotels early. The secret of June is getting out. The window is closing, and savvy travelers are already catching on.
Definitely.
Second, pack layers. We just jumped from the crisp breezes of Porto to the sweltering heat of Marrakech to the freezing high-altitude passes of the Himalayas. You're traversing multiple climate zones, even variable altitudes in the same country, and your wardrobe has to adapt.
And we also absolutely have to highlight the guide's focus on sustainable travel.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
If we are venturing out to appreciate these fragile windows of nature, we have an obligation to protect them. The guide specifically reminds the listener to use reef-safe sunscreen if they are diving into the clear waters of Mauritius to prevent chemical bleaching of the coral.
That is so important.
And in Yellowstone, it is critical to always stick strictly to the marked boardwalks to protect both the delicate geothermal crust and the newly active wildlife.
It's about respecting the environment so that the vault can open again next year for the next generation. You know, when you pull all these threads together, the biological triggers of the Serengeti, the melting ice walls of Ladakh, the cultural thaws of Porto, and the financial freedom in Italy, this deep dive really proves something profound for you as a traveler.
It really does.
Being a well-informed traveler isn't just about picking a spot on a map. It's about mastering the timing of the globe to maximize your value, your comfort, and your awe.
It completely reframes the map. But, it does leave us with one final and perhaps slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Ooh, what's that?
If this June shoulder season hack is increasingly recognized by savvy guides and travelers as the absolute best time to go, with better weather, 30% savings, manageable crowds, at what point does the travel industry simply catch on and shift its entire pricing calendar?
Wow. If everyone shifts their calendar 14 days, the hack just becomes the new peak season.
Exactly. And when that happens, when June prices inevitably skyrocket to match August levels, where will the new hidden windows of opportunity emerge for the true explorers? Will we be chasing late May, early October?
The perpetual chase for the hidden window. That is a brilliant question to leave you with to explore on your own. When the secret gets out, where does the true explorer go next? Thank you for jumping across the globe and through the calendar with us today. Until next time, keep looking for the open vault.